This episode was made possible thanks to generous supporters on Patreon. There is an ongoing debate whether the CAGED system or the 3-note per string method is better when it comes to learning the notes on the fretboard. And in this video I'm going to share my insight and opinion on the topic, so let's get started. For those of you who aren't aware of the aforementioned methods, I will briefly describe them, and right after that I will share my thoughts and I will elaborate on which one I think is better and for what purpose. The CAGED system is an approach which is based on 5 basic major chord shapes, and these are C major, A major, G major, E major and D major, and the names of these chords form the word CAGED, hence the name. The idea is that you have 5 basic shapes that you can play along the neck, and you have 5 different ways to play a corresponding scale on top of it. The 3 notes per string method, on the other side, relies solely on memorizing visual shapes that one just learns and stack them on top of each other like a Tetris game. I've said in a previous episode that one of the best ways to learn the notes on the fretboard is to start building triads, and this works very well because it's musical, it's small chunks of information that are easy to remember, and you can connect them to each other into bigger chunks, and therefore you have some logical knowledge of all the notes across the neck. In the CAGED system we've got full chords, and they are also easy to remember, and they're audibly recognizable structures, and they function the same way as chunks, just like the triads. In addition, the scale patterns that you use corresponding to each of these chords are very easy to follow, because every other note from the scale, with one exception, happens to be a note from the chord, and you can use this as pivotal points, and therefore it's very easy to find your way through the scale and memorize it better. So if we have the C major chord, for example, and we start the scale from this C, so we've got C, D, E is again a note from the chord, then we've got F, G is also a note from the chord, then we've got A, we've got B, this is the exception, and then we arrive at another C, which is again part of the chord. So and of course you could extend this scale across all the strings, and thus starting from the 6th string, now this was the C major shape, and now if we take the A major shape but we transpose it so it becomes C major chord, we get this. And from this perspective we can build the C major scale in a slightly different way. For example, and of course again we can do it on all of the strings. Now we already have 2 of them connected. They share same notes from the same octave, so it's easy to visualize the connecting point and easily transition from one to the other. Then the next chord from the CAGED system is G major shape, and we again transpose it so it becomes C major. And from this perspective, again, we build a scale. Now we can see that some of the notes that we play in the different shapes, they are common, and this helps to connect the dots. The next shape is the E major shape, and again we transpose it so it becomes C major. We get this, and here we can have another scale pattern. And finally the D major shape, which we transpose up here, and we've got another pattern. Now, as you can see, we used these 5 shapes and corresponding scale patterns to them and have a meaningful and connected knowledge about the notes on the fretboard, and that spreads all across the first half of the neck all the way up to the 12th fret. After that, the same scheme repeats one more time, so this is a very efficient way to learn the notes. With the 3 notes per string approach, one memorizes sequences of 3 notes per string, then builds them on top of each other, and in such a way you get a scale that looks like that. Having equal number of notes per string makes it very easy to play, and therefore this is probably the most efficient way to play a scale. You can also memorize chunks of 2 strings at once. If we play the C major scale from the 6th string 8th fret, what we can see is that we have 3 distinct chunks, and all of these chunks consist of 2 identical 3 notes per string patterns. And if we observe any of the other scales, we can find similar chunks and we can just memorize them. The downside of this approach is that it's not really so musical. One mechanically learns some sequences of notes, and they're not so usable when it comes to improvising and writing a good melody. The reason for that is both the improvisation and the good melody are rather based on outlining chords, which has more in common with CAGED system than just mindlessly playing scales up and down. I've seen many people who manage to play scales with spectacular speed, and when they're asked what notes they're playing, and it's an awkward silence.
Hello darkness, my old friend.
The reason is that you have nothing to connect the scale to in a musical way like you do with the CAGED system, and as a consequence you're not really aware of what notes you're playing, and this makes it very easy to get lost in the middle of the scale and you're unable to find your way back. From what we can see, both systems have pros and cons, and I wouldn't say that you should play only the one or only the other. To get a maximum benefit of it all, I would rather suggest you take the best of both worlds and be aware what is best in which situation. CAGED system is definitely better when it comes to learning the notes on the fretboard and connecting them in a musical way to chords. 3 notes per string might not have the same advantage, but undoubtedly it's much more efficient way to play scales fast, and this is for purely ergonomic reasons. So my advice to you would be to start with the CAGED system, and once you feel confidence with your fretboard knowledge, then you can introduce the 3 notes per string, and in such a way you will maximize the effect of what you've already learned with the CAGED system. And if you want to try a proven alternative, go and check out my videos about how to learn notes on the fretboard and also how to learn scales on the guitar, where I share my own strategy of efficient ways to do these tasks. So that's everything for today's episode, and I hope you find it useful. Thanks for watching, and please give it a like and let me know in the comments below which system do you prefer and why. And if you like my work, consider supporting me on Patreon on the links down in the description, where you can get all kinds of interesting materials and downloads, and memberships start as low as $3 per month. And now you can also support the channel by using the YouTube membership by clicking the join button down there, and you get the same benefits. And if you prefer to support me by a single donation, you can use the PayPal me link down in the description. If you're a first-time viewer, please subscribe to my channel and click that bell notification button down there to get informed when I upload new video. See you next time, and remember, practice makes perfect.